How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the first movie review here on Triple 64. If you don't know, my other channel actually started its life as a movie review channel way back in, I think 2014 was when I started it. And I never really stuck with it. I did my fair share of movie reviews, and it's always something I've been passionate about. Well, movies is something I've always been passionate about. And I got the big idea to start a movie review channel way back then, and did it for a little while, then I stopped, and then I ended up coming back to it when the Blair Witch sequel got made. I don't even remember what year that was at this point, and I did it for a handful of movies there, and I even did it in the van for a while. But ultimately, I sort of just stopped and just let it go the way of the dodo, so to speak. And after I started this channel, I decided that it would not only be a gaming channel and a Let's Play channel and a live streaming channel, but also a place for me to potentially do movie reviews again. And that's what we're doing now, obviously. You can tell from the title on this video. So it's kind of fitting that it was a Jurassic Park movie that brought me back to doing movie reviews. Jurassic Park, the original from 1993, is definitely my favorite movie of all time. It captured my imagination way back then when I was just a wee lad, and I've been in love with the franchise ever since. Yeah, it's had its ups and downs, and I'm pretty sure we can all agree it peaked with the first movie, but like most things in Hollywood these days, if something does really well, you can bet your arse we're going to get a whole boatload of sequels, and here we are. So yeah, I just went and saw it, and I figured this is a great time to just sit down and sort of talk about it. In the past, when I've done these movie reviews, they sort of came with a lot of pomp and circumstance. I'd green screen behind me and remove the background, and I'd do a whole bunch of flashy cuts and edits and whatnot. I think for this going forward, and at least for this review, I'm just going to have a little bit more of a simplistic approach. And I'm just going to talk to you and tell you my thoughts on the movie. If there's some ums and ahs and humming and hawing, my apologies. I'll do what I can to remove that. But at this point in my life, I'm more interested in just chatting about the movies than I am sort of making it flashy, or more flashy than it needs to be. So with that being said, let's talk about Jurassic World Rebirth. So Jurassic World Rebirth is the 7th movie in the Jurassic Park franchise. And up front, it's not a reboot, it's not a remake. It is actually a continuation of the story that came before it in Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and Dominion. So dinosaurs have been roaming the Earth. Some time has passed since Dominion. Human beings are used to living with dinosaurs, although at this stage in its chronological history, they've started to die off due to the climate, and they only really exist really close to the equator on a select group of islands. Very coincidental. The story is, nobody ever learns, which I guess is kind of on point for human beings in general. But a motley crew's got to get together because this big, rich guy has a harebrained scheme to get dinosaur DNA, and he's going to use it to cure heart disease, right? So he's got to put together a crew of people that are just crazy enough to go down to this like exclusion zone, because all governments around the world have collectively agreed that it's illegal for human beings to go down to that area and travel there. I mean, for good reason, but that's like the first time I can imagine all governments in the world have ever agreed on anything. So of course our crew's got to break the law and go down there, and they're going to extract DNA from 3 different dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs have to be living. And it's very early on, it's established that the reason this is viable is because these specific dinosaurs they're going to be getting the DNA from are massive dinosaurs because they got the biggest hearts. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to go into specific details, but that's the basic for the plot, basic storyline for this movie, right? So all the characters get together. You've got Scarlett Johansson. All the characters are brand new this time around. There's nobody that's returning from any of the previous sets of movies. There is a name drop of one of the older characters, which I appreciated as a fan, but that's the real only connection that there is outside of the fact that there's dinosaurs and Jurassic Park existed as an amusement park and what have you. So Scarlett Johansson plays this rough and tumble mercenary who is approached by the rich guy to go to the island and lead the expedition. And along for the ride is the never spent a day in the field scientist who knows how this is going to work, and he's developed the technology to extract the DNA from the dinosaurs. And then we've got Mahershala Ali sort of rounding out that crew of main characters as a lifelong friend of Scarlett Johansson's characters. Her name was Zora in the movie, for what it's worth. I don't remember anybody else's. That's not true. The scientist's name was Dr. Loomis. Everybody else was sort of forgettable. I don't really know what that says, so take it for what you will. But they all head down there on a Mahershala Ali's boat, and they're going to go get a blood sample from a swimming dinosaur, a flying dinosaur, and a land roaming dinosaur. And that's we're off to the races. So, it's very by the books, very by the numbers. And if you've seen a Jurassic Park movie or a Jurassic World movie at this point, you know what to expect. And I think that's kind of the downfall of this movie in the end. Or at least, not the downfall. It wasn't a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it played it very safe. There wasn't a lot of surprise. You can pretty much figure out how it's going to end. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you don't want the plot to be overcomplicated. You're not looking for big twists or surprises, and that's fine. But in this case, it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, there it is. The cool angle here, or I guess the attempted cool angle with this approach, or in this movie, is that the island they're going to is another, yet again, it's another island that never existed back then, where they were doing crazy experiments and they were trying to create hybrid dinosaurs. So in one sense, that's cool. Because when you get to the island, you've got your regular dinosaurs that you know, and you've also got these dinosaurs that are a mashup of two separate ones. We kind of got that in the in the first Jurassic World movie with the Indominus Rex, right? And then you had the Indoraptor in Fallen Kingdom. Those were kind of like glimmers at what they've done here. And in some instances, it was cool. In other instances, it's very corny. And I want to talk on that for a little bit. There's a lot of that in this movie. Not a lot, but there were a few moments where I just had to like laugh or guffaw, and just like it just seems silly, and it just seems like you're either putting this in there for a laugh, or it's just in there, I don't even know, to move the plot along. To that extent, to the plot, as the movie goes on, I'm okay being strapped to these main characters that they spent a lot of time establishing. But then we eventually meet this secondary set of characters, and initially it was super jarring. And right there, it put a bad taste in my mouth, because we deviate away from these main characters, and now we're hyper-focused on this new set of characters, and we spend a long time with them. And like, you know that these characters' paths are going to cross for the purpose of the story, but it really sort of took me out of it, and it took the momentum out of the tension that was going on. And that happens once, not twice, but 3 separate times in this movie, because eventually the characters, they come together, then they separate, and then we're bouncing back and forth between these 2 different sets of characters. And every time that it happened, I was always relieved when we got back to Scarlett Johansson's crew, and I was sort of like, when we would bounce back to the other characters. And that wasn't the best. It kind of made it feel like they had David Coep, or however you say his last name, he wrote this screenplay. He was the only credited screenwriter. But it really does feel like there was 2 completely different ideas for a Jurassic World sequel, and neither one of them had the runtime that they were going for, probably like 45 minutes each, or maybe an hour each, and they decided, no, let's just mash them together. And that happens a lot these days, but it was really painfully evident in this one. And it was a little disappointing in that regard, because again, I'm okay with stuff like that, and I see why they did it. Well, I'm assuming why they did it, but I see why they did it for certain story beats, because, let's leave Scarlett Johansson's crew alone here. We'll come check in with these characters, and by the time we come back over to Scarlett Johansson's crew, they're in a completely different location, and we don't have to show you how they got there. So it's kind of like we just did it for convenience's sake. I don't know if that was the reason why or not, but it was jarring, and it sort of ruined the pacing of the movie for me, all in all. The performances in the movie are really decent. I was going to say the same thing I said in my initial out of the theater reaction. I was going to say they were great, because I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, because I'm sure everybody clocked in. You're clocking in for a Jurassic Park movie. That's got to be like a dream come true for a lot of these people. Scarlett Johansson does well with what she has to work with. She's pretty one note, I would say. She's got a little bit of character development here or there. Again, it's very predictable. The actor playing Dr. Loomis, he had the best performance. I actually believe that he was in awe of these creatures. He still had that glimmer of, he was probably a little boy that loved dinosaurs, and he grew up to admire them. And that's like the reason they were able to convince him to go on this trip anyway, was that they're just saying, oh, you want to see a dinosaur in the wild, or do you want to just be the guy who's seen Dinosaurs at a zoo. It's like, they're dinosaurs. I mean, that's an angle that was touched on in the first Jurassic World movie, is that dinosaurs were a thing. They were brought back to life and everybody loved it. But then as time went on, public interest dropped. And that's sort of a relevant topic. And that was relevant back then. And I guess it doesn't really make it seem like it's a relevant point for the public in this movie, but they were making it a relevant point for one single main character in this movie. Okay, fine. But his performance was very good. Mahershala Ali, he was good. To his credit, he was good. He was given the least amount of stuff to do. I feel like his character could have been anybody, and you really underutilized his talents for sure. And then the last thing I'll say on this movie is that as fun as it is, because at the end of the day, it truly is, it's a summer blockbuster popcorn movie. It's not, I don't think, going to spark the wonder of any children. It was funny, the theater that I was in, after the initial opening sequence, when the title happens after that initial event, some little boy on the other side of the theater, the top of his lungs goes, "That wasn't scary." And everybody in the theater laughed. I mean, that might be indicative of where we're at with movie going, with Jurassic World movies, or maybe it's just indicative of the crew that put this movie together. Although the director was Gareth Edwards, and I'm pretty sure he knows what he's doing when it comes to monster movies. And to that extent, all I will say regarding the way the movie plays out with those hybrid dinosaurs and stuff, I wasn't the biggest fan of the climax of this movie. I always felt like the Tyrannosaurus Rex never got his fair shake after the first movie. Well, maybe Lost World a little bit. But I always felt like he was a secondary fiddle. And I never liked that with the preceding movies, like with Jurassic Park 3 and then the Jurassic World trilogy, which I guess we have to now call a quadrilogy because they didn't change the title. He gets a scene in this movie, but my goodness, it's very short-lived. Let's just put it that way. But I might be mistaken on this, but there is a sequence in this movie revolving around the Tyrannosaurus Rex that I'm like 99% positive that it's an idea that was intended for the original Jurassic Park movie back in the early 90s. I am a huge fan of Jurassic Park. I had a behind the scenes book, and I'm pretty sure there was a concept of a scene on a raft for that original movie that got scrapped, left on the cutting room floor. We have it now here in its glory, and it's actually entertaining for what it is. I just kind of wondered as the scene was wrapping up, I'm like, what would Steven Spielberg have done different? Because he's just an executive producer on this one, right? As he has been for them since The Lost World, the second Jurassic Park movie. So that was nice to see sort of come full circle as somebody who's a huge fan. But again, I was just left wondering what could have been, because that scene itself had a lot of that cheese I had mentioned previously. Also, I mean, it's just indicative of where movies are these days, but you look at the original Jurassic Park movie and everybody clocked into work, including the animatronics artists and everything, and that's why that movie still stands up today. Sure, it starts to show its age a little bit around the edges and whatnot, but the fact that the dinosaurs were actually there for the most part, that really lends itself to the storytelling, and here there is CGI coming out of your wazoo. I understand it would cost way more money to take Scarlett Johansson up onto a cliff. I understand it would probably take a lot of money to get Scarlett Johansson up on some random cliff down in the Caribbean or wherever and have this beautiful waterfall vista. That probably doesn't even exist in the world. Or if it does, you're not going there. You're not taking your actors there. And I get that. But the CGI was very noticeable in that regard. Also, there's this one little instance in the movie, and it's not a spoiler, but there's a sequence where they come upon this temple, and my first thought was like, that's the mouth of a statue that you're going into. Is this a temple? And if so, why is there a temple here? There was nothing established that there would have been any sort of ancient civilization here. It was just that this was a place for modern tech where they had built this laboratory and whatnot. Even Scarlett Johansson's character says, "What is this place? Some sort of temple?" And that's the end of that conversation. Also, there was more than one instance of some pretty jarring editing, and not just back and forth between the two different storylines going on, but just from one scene to the next that felt a little out of place. So I don't know if there was an idea that got cut or if they ran out of time or whatever. I don't know, but it was pretty noticeable for me. In the end, I had fun with the movie. I don't know that I'm going to remember it very well. I mean, me being me, I probably will, and I'll still pick it up when it comes out. But that's only because I'm an insane Jurassic Park fan, and I even like Dominion. I even like Jurassic Park 3, right? But I'm a little bit of a special breed when it comes to that. Should you go out and see this movie? No. I really don't think so. I don't think you're going to be missing out. Like I said, it's very by the books, by the numbers. It's got some real fun sequences, but it's disjointed as all get out. And it does come across at the end of the day as feeling completely unnecessary and tacked on. Now, that's how Jurassic World felt when it came out, the first one, and then we had Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. And looking back, I really enjoyed Jurassic World for what it was. So maybe, because there is sequel written all over the ending of this movie, if you are very aware of the lore of the Jurassic Park films anyway. My order of like best to worst now at this point is, well, not including Rebirth, is best Jurassic Park, then The Lost World, then I would say Jurassic World, then Fallen Kingdom, then Dominion, and then Jurassic Park 3. I hate that turd of a movie. I mean, hate's a strong word. I'll still watch it, but... So where does Rebirth fall in that? I think it slots in between Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, honestly. Because Dominion I enjoyed because you got the original cast coming back, for sure, and that was a lot of fun for a fanboy. But it had a lot more cheese in it than even this movie did. So, yeah, the third worst or the fifth best Jurassic Park movie, Jurassic World movie. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's my thoughts on Jurassic World Rebirth. I wouldn't rush out to see it, but if you are a fan like me, you'll find some enjoyment.